Okay, if the exam board decide to give you some files, then the first thing you're going to need to do is open them up. So double click on project and that should open up Greenfoot. Now in this example, what we're going to say is that we're going to have one cat on the screen, which we're going to be able to control using the arrow keys. There needs to be 2 mice, which are going to move randomly around the screen. There's going to be 2 mouse holes, which will just stay still on the screen, and then there needs to be a counter. And what the idea is that if the cat touches the mouse, then the mouse disappears and you get 1 point. And if the mouse touches the mouse hole, then the mouse disappears, however you get -1 point. Obviously this could change depending on the scenario, but with all the skills I'm about to show you, hopefully no matter what comes up, you should be able to do. So the first thing that we're going to do is to populate the world, because actually you can get a good chunk of the marks without actually coding anything, and it's vital that we get that right. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to delete this counter, because actually if we delete this counter and then import a new one, it comes with a lot of the code already written. So I'm going to right click on the counter and go to remove. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to go to controls, I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to go to import class. You're going to click on the counter and press import, and what that will do is it will create another counter here. Now at the moment we've got these lines on it which are never good, so what you've got to do is all you do is click on compile down the bottom right hand side, and that will compile and it will create the code and stop those errors coming up. Then what we can do is start to populate the world. So right mouse click and click on new counter and just click on the screen. We needed 2 mice holes. Now there's another way of doing this. If you click on it and then hold shift, you can then click somewhere on the screen to put your 2 mouse holes. We need 1 cat, so I'm going to put the cat here in the corner, and we needed 2 mice. So holding down shift, I'm going to put 2 mice on the screen as well. What you then must do, and you need to do this to gain quite a number of marks, is to go to controls and then save the world. What that will do is every time you run it or press reset, it will put those on the screen for you. Now at this stage, what I'm going to suggest that you do is go to scenario and save as. Pick somewhere sensible to save it. I'm just going to save it on my desktop, but you obviously won't do that in the exam. And make sure you save it as whatever it asks you to save the final version of. So we're going to pretend that this one is CatChase final. But what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to put version 1 for now. Now we will need to take that out or you'll lose marks. However, we can always go back to this one if we have a bit of a problem later on. So I'm just going to press save. And actually, you've got a significant number of the marks already by doing that. Because actually you're going to get a mark for saving it with the correct name, you got a mark for putting the cat on, you got a mark for putting the mouse hole and the correct number of mice, and that it's all there compiled when you run the program. So you're probably looking at 5 or 6 possible marks just by putting the things on the world and clicking on controls, save the world. So remember, you need to save the world. Right, what we're going to now do then is we're going to get the mouse randomly moving around the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on the mouse icon and go to open editor. What we're then going to do is we're going to be looking for the bit that says public void act, and this is where we're going to be typing our code. So the first thing that we need to do is get rid of this add your code here, and for most of them we're going to be using if statements. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in the following. You're going to type in if open bracket, close bracket, press enter, and then you're going to put one of the curly brackets in. Press enter a couple of times and then close that curly bracket. Now the reason for that is it just helps us so that we don't miss one of the brackets out later on, and also it helps us with this code completion. When you press control and enter, it just means that no errors are going to come up. So what we're going to say is, firstly we need to get a random number which is worth a mark. So what we're going to type in is we're going to say if Greenfoot dot, then if you press control and enter on your keyboard, we're looking for the get random number. So you can double click on it or select it and press enter. You can see I've got underscore limit underscore selected. So if I press backspace, that will delete that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a random number up to 100. But what we're saying is if that random number is less than 70, then we want it to do something. Now what we want to do if it's less than 70 is that we want to move our mouse by 1 square. Don't forget to put the semicolon on. Worst comes to worst and you forget and you press compile, it'll actually tell you down here that a semicolon is expected, and actually where it is it's highlighted red. So it does give you some help. Press compile. As you can see we've got no syntax errors, therefore this should work. Now what we also need to do is we need to, not only is it going to move, we want it to turn randomly. So rather than typing everything again, I'm going to highlight the bit of code that I know works because I've just compiled it, and I'm going to paste it 2 more times. And the bits that we need to change are, we're not going to say if it's less than 70 because we want it to be a bit more random. We're going to say, okay, if it's less than 40, then what I want it to do is I want it to turn, and I want it to turn 90 degrees. However, if that number is less than 20, then I want it to turn minus 90 degrees. Press compile and check we've got no errors. Class compiled, no syntax errors. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to press run, and as you can see the mice are whizzing around the screen, and we're happy that that's random. So I'm going to press pause. Next thing I'm going to do, and you should really get used to doing this because you can always come back to them if you break it. It's very difficult to fix a Greenfoot file. You're best to go back and change it. I'm going to go to File, Save As, gone back to the desktop. I've already got one called CatChase Final version 1. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to call it exactly the same. CatChase Final version 2. And press save. Wait for that to reload up. Press the compile button, just check we've got no problems. Okay, so we've got the mice whizzing around the screen. We now need to be able to control the cat. So what we're going to do, exactly the same, we're going to right click on the cat and open up the editor. What we're going to do, again, in making sure we're in the public void act section, you can delete that. You don't have to delete it, you could just type underneath it, but I just think it's easier to get rid of it. We're going to type in if, open bracket, close bracket, press enter, open a curly bracket, enter a couple of times, and close the curly bracket. Exactly the same in this section here. We're going to type if Greenfoot dot, and I'm going to press Control and enter, and this time because we're controlling it with a keyboard we want to say is the key down. I'm going to delete that. The key that I'm interested in is if I've pressed the up key. Make sure you put that in speech marks. So if I press the up key, what I want to happen is I want the cat to move 1 space. So I'm going to type in move 1, and don't forget the semicolon. Real simple. I'm going to copy and paste and put another space there just to make it look a little bit more organised, and I'm going to do the opposite if I press the down key. So if I press the down key, I want it of course to move -1. So we've got it moving forwards and backwards. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it 2 more times because we need to also get it to turn. So what we're going to say is if I press the right key, then I want it to turn 90 degrees. And if I press the left key, then I want it to turn -90 degrees. Okay, so we can now press compile, wait for it to say that there's no syntax errors, which is good. Then we're going to press run and slow it right down, otherwise we're not going to see what's going on. I'm going to press the up key and you can see the cat's moving, press the down key and it's going backwards. If I press right, it turns to the right and I can carry on pressing the up key. Just check that it's controllable and you've not accidentally missed a minus out or anything like that, but it should move around the screen quite easily. So I'm going to press pause, I'm going to go to scenario, I'm going to go to save as, I'm going to type in CatChase Final. I don't care how confident you are with this, please do this. version 3 and press save. Wait for it to reload, and then we can start looking at the next section once you've pressed compile. So by this point you've actually got a significant number of the marks. If you can get to this stage, you're sort of in the top 20% of the ones that I've ever seen. Okay, because a lot of people don't even get this far, or it just doesn't compile and you get 0 or 1 mark if you've named the file correctly. So what you then need to do is we're going to do the section where we're going to get the mouse to remove if it touches the cat. So we need to write this on the cat layer. Okay, so you're always writing this on the one that causes the action to happen. So I'm going to right click on cat and go to open editor, and I'm going to go to the bottom of the section with my public void act. You need to be careful with the brackets because it's in this public void act. It needs to go before this one. If you highlight one, they should both highlight. So I'm going to click at the end of the code I've written and press enter a couple of times. And what we're going to do, again, another if statement. So you should know by now how to set that up. I'm going to put another space in just so that we can see what we're doing. So in here, what we're going to say is if it's touching. Now we don't. The only time you can't do control and enter is if the first thing is Greenfoot for some reason. But as this one isn't, we can do control and enter, and we're looking for the is touching class. So in there, double click or press enter on it and then delete the class. Now this is going to depend on the scenario, but we're saying in this one if it's touching the mouse. So we type in mouse.class with a capital M, because over here we've got a capital M for our class. What we're then going to say is we need to remove it. So control and enter again, and we're looking for something to do with removing it. So if you scroll down, eventually you should see remove touching class. Again, the class that we want to remove is mouse.class. Compile that, and you'll see, genuinely, didn't do this on purpose, I forgot to put the semicolon on the end, but it told me that, so that's not a problem. So I press compile, and we've got it compiled with no syntax errors. So what we can now do is run that, and what I tend to do when I'm marking them is I set the speed really high, otherwise you're waiting for ages, and you can see the mouse have gone, so it must have removed them when it touched the cat. So I can reset that and put them back on again. Now at this point what I'd suggest you do is you do a file save as and save it as another version, but as this isn't my exam and I'm not that worried because I can always go back and make changes, I'm not going to save it, so speed the video up a little bit. So what the next thing we're going to look at is how to make the sound play. So again, on the cat layer in this example, again the one that causes the action to happen, so the cat is touching the mouse, that's causing the action. So we're going to open the editor for the mouse, and under here, when it's touching the mouse, we want it to play a sound. So it's a Greenfoot sound, so we have to type Greenfoot dot control and enter, and then we can see what we've got. And we've got play sound here. Now the sound should be given to you. You're going to need to check what it's called by looking in the files that are given, but in this case, and pretty much every single example so far, the file is called pop.wav. Don't forget to put your semicolon on the end. Compile that. You would then run it, check that it works, check that you're getting the pop sound. If you get an error come up, then obviously we need to have a look at sorting this line out. Okay, now it might be that you're having a right stressor that you can't get it working. If you put // in front of it, it'll stop that line running, it's commented out, you're not going to lose any marks and your program still runs. If your program doesn't compile, 0 marks unless you've named it correctly, in which case it's 1 mark. So remember, / if you want to comment a line out. So what we also need to do is we need to get the mouse to remove, to disappear, if it touches a mouse hole. So the mouse hole is the thing that's causing the action, because if the mouse touches it, then it's going to, just compiling that to get rid of those lines, it upsets me. If we right click on the mouse hole and open the editor, you can see we've got no code there yet, and we need to add something in. Now, we've actually written something very similar to this already, so what we could do is pinch that code rather than rewriting it. So if I open up the cat editor, you can see that we've got an is it touching something and to do something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that and paste it into here. There's no point rewriting things if you know it already works. So what we're going to say is, alright, it's not, if it's touching the mouse, we want to remove the mouse. Now, in this example, it might not need to play a sound, so we're going to get rid of that there. Press compile, just make sure that it works and you've got no syntax errors. What we can now do, now this is a bit more tricky to see, so I've got to slow it down, is if I run this, I'm going to press run, hopefully, as long as it doesn't touch the cat, and the mice eventually go over the hole, you can see that that one then disappeared. So I'm happy that that works. Okay, we'll speed it up and just get rid of the other one as well. There we go. So, reset it, everything should go back on the screen. So we're now happy that the mouse hole removes the mouse. That only leaves us now with getting the counter working. Whatever you do, save it as a different version before this, because this is the most difficult section and the section that's most likely to cause an error. So, the scenario that we said was, if the cat touches the mouse, then we get 1 point. If the mouse touches the mouse hole, then he gets -1 point. That could obviously change with 5 or 10 or whatever the score tends to be. They like to mix it up a little bit, but we'll just go with 1 for now. So, to start with then for the cat, I'm going to open the editor, and down here, if it's touching the mouse, we then need to add a point, to the counter. So, this is the only line of code you're really going to have to sort of learn. That's, you know, a little bit complicated. So to start with, we have the counter here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have get world. Now, press Control and Enter, and you can always see if anything comes up. I can't remember if it's going to be honest. So let's have a look under get world. So there we go, get world. So I can use get world. We've then got dot get objects. Let's try it again. So press enter and get objects. Now the class that we want to get is the counter dot class. And what we want to do is we want to get 0, open and close brackets, and close off that first bracket. And for this one we're going to add 1. Now we don't need to fully understand what every little section of this does. It's only one line of code that we need to learn. So I'm going to press compile and see if anything comes up. No syntax errors. So now what should happen if I run this is, as long as I can get to the mice before they go into the hole, you can see there the score's gone up by 1. Now it didn't go down by 1 when the mouse touched the mouse hole. So what we need to do is, same as before, pinch as much code as possible. We know it's working, so I'm going to copy that line, Control and C, or copy up here. I'm going to go into the mouse hole code, and down here I'm just going to paste it, Control and V, or use the buttons at the top. But I don't want to add 1, I want to add -1 to it. So I'm now going to press compile, check if we've got any syntax errors. Nothing's come up. So now if I run this program, we already know that the 1 works, so I'm going to try and keep the cat out of the way, and we're going to see if the mouse will go into the mouse hole. There we go, -2 because they both went into that mouse hole there. So we're happy that it works. Final thing you need to do, because we're at 14 out of 15 at the minute, is go to scenario, save as, and give it the final correct name, making sure it's 100% spelt correctly. Press save, and that should be all of the marks for the Greenfoot section.